I was glad to wake up today and see that the Earth is still spinning on its axis. We're still here. We've got war in the Middle East. President Trump saying, I think it's time for a deal with Iran. The Israelis, it is reported, have achieved air superiority over Iran's skies. We continue to pray for Israel. You don't want World War III? Then you better hope that Iran doesn't complete their efforts to possess a nuclear weapon, because they'll do one thing if they get their hands on a nuke, and they will wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And that is not something that I think normal people want to be a party to anywhere in the world. The violent, vicious people who hate Israel, who likely hate the United States, I guess are okay with that. But meanwhile, here at home, there was an unspeakable, horrifying political assassination apparently over the weekend. I don't know if you want to call it political or not, but this crazed killer with some kind of a grudge against Democrats allegedly donned a police uniform and a creepy latex mask. If you haven't seen the surveillance pictures of this guy, it's something right out of a horror movie. He shot one Minnesota state lawmaker to death, killed her husband, shot the family dog. The poor dog reportedly had to be put down by the grieving, orphaned children of this poor former Democrat House Speaker, Melissa Hortman. And nothing about this makes sense. This story is so bizarre. Of course, you know that by now, the guy's name is Vance Boelter, some kind of weird former pastor, owned a security company, worked for a funeral home, had a wife and 5 kids and a big, beautiful home, but had a couple of roommates, including the Papa John's delivery guy who's sitting on the stoop reading Vance Boelter's text messages. And I'm just looking right now at the charging document from the state of Minneapolis, Hennepin County. This makes no sense. He's been charged not with first-degree murder, but second-degree murder with intent not premeditated. Not premeditated? How's he not charged with first-degree murder? I'm no lawyer, obviously, but does that make sense? Does it make sense that the pizza guy is on the stoop insisting the guy is a Trump supporter? And what difference does it make if he's a Trump supporter? What difference does it make if he was a Tim Walz appointee? I was disgusted over the weekend in watching social media start out, he's a Tim Walz appointee. Oh, look at that, he's one of them. Then apparently the manifesto is released. He's targeting nobody but Democrats and abortion providers, abortion clinics. And according to the roommate, he's a Trump supporter. Who cares? And, you know, I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to turn it over to you, because if you think I've got the wrong take on this, I don't mind welcoming dissent on how I feel. When the crazed, maniacal, would-be killer of all the Republican congressmen he could kill, who nearly killed Steve Scalise when he shot him and tried to kill the Republicans on that baseball field, when it was revealed he was a Bernie Sanders supporter, I don't remember any of us blaming Bernie Sanders. I don't remember any of us blaming Democrats. There is no purpose, there is nothing productive of trying to blame one side or the other. And I think we got to knock it off. I really do. And I would urge our side to do the same thing. Look, I can't stand Tim Walz. I think the guy is a disaster. And he likely was a big contributing factor to Kamala losing the election. So I've got nothing good to say about him. And yes, it seems very notable that Tim Walz is now calling for, peace and love and unity after he went and said you need to go out and bully the blank out of Donald Trump. We all got to be bullies if you don't like Donald Trump, and we got to be meaner. Well, adults in the room can recognize Tim Walz didn't mean go out and kill people you disagree with. It doesn't matter that this guy was a Tim Walz appointee. And by the way, he was also appointed by the Mark Dayton administration. He was a Republican. We got to knock it off. We got to knock it off. Remember, the Bernie Sanders shooter. We didn't do this. And I don't know if this means lowering the temperature a little bit. I don't know if it means cooling down the rhetoric a little bit. I don't know. All I know is to blame an ideology, to blame a political party for the violent actions of a killer. Yes, I know the Democrats have lifted up Luigi Mangione. I understand that they seem to be, frankly, a pretty violent bunch. But if we don't stop blaming one side or the other for the actions of one twisted, evil lunatic, things are going to just get worse. 800-655-MIKE. We've got a lot of breaking news today. Some would say that the political violence in Minnesota leads to the lawmaker's death. I sort of reject that. And I believe we've got to be careful in blaming a political ideology, as awful as we might find it to be, for the murders of Melissa Hortman and her husband. Let's see what you think here in the Relief Factor studios. Join us, 800-655-MIKE, 800-655-6453. One number does it all. Text us on the MyPillow text line. Call us so we can put your voice front and center. However you get here, please get here on this Monday episode of a breaking news edition of the Mike Gallagher Show. 800-655-6453. Let me issue a correction. My apologies. I incorrectly identified Mark Dayton, the former governor of Minnesota, as a Republican. And of course, as many know, he is a Democrat. So my apologies. Again, this guy was identified as a Tim Walz appointee. He was also a Mark Dayton appointee, both Democrats. But, again, who cares? Who cares what his ideology was? You want to know what his ideology was? Murder, apparently. Cold-blooded killing. But a lot of it just doesn't seem to add up. A lot of people are pointing out, I saw somebody on X say that in Minnesota, the grand jury apparently is the one that needs to issue a first-degree murder charge. Now, if that makes sense to you, you let me know. So the local authorities charge somebody with second degree, not premeditated, when, for all intents and purposes, anybody could see that it was premeditated. But then a grand jury comes along and they'll up the charge to first degree and, I guess, premeditated. So, well, good. I got to believe the guy's never going to see the light of day. But I am glad they caught him alive. I figured he'd be dead in the woods somewhere with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but evidently his ego wouldn't let him do that, and now there's going to be a lot of questions answered. And as Orlando just texted me on the MyPillow text line, this doesn't make any sense. He's supposedly a Trump supporter and a Republican, but a Walz appointee, His wife was stopped in a vehicle with lots of cash and passports in the vehicle. And yes, it appeared that the woman he killed was the only Democrat who voted against the Democrats and in favor of denying illegals over the age of 18 health care benefits. And they were mad at her for that. And boy, were they angry at her for that. But if you saw the manifesto, which incidentally was quickly, or the hit list rather, they don't want to release the manifesto for some reason, but they released the hit list he had, and it was all Democrats and abortion clinics. And you got the weird roommate with the Papa John's t-shirt on, claiming the guy was a big Trump supporter, as is the Papa John's guy, and they were roommates. So he's got apparently 2 roommates, but he's also married with 5 kids and has a big, beautiful home. None of it makes a whole lot of sense. John's in Venice, Florida. We'll start there. I also want to take you back to Minnesota with a lot of the local reporting going on there with, this horrific apparent political assassination, they're calling it. Hey, John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to send my condolences to the lawmakers' families and friends, of course. I thought it was pretty interesting watching Tim Walz, the AG, the DA, police chiefs all standing there giving accolades to the cooperation of interagency, bipartisan, all to bring this guy in. And it seems like these are the exact things that our sanctuary cities are against. And I just find it extraordinarily hypocritical.
Well, there's tons of hypocrisy going on right now. I mean, it's also fairly hypocritical to say, well, let's all be unified and let's have, kumbaya moments, when just a couple of weeks ago, Tim Walz was saying they need to be meaner and they need to bully the S out of Donald Trump. Here was, of course, Tim Walz holding a press conference and attributing the death of this woman and her husband to meanness.
It's not about hatred. It's not about mean tweets. It's not about demeaning someone. It's leading with grace and compassion and vision and compromise and decency. That was taken from us in Minnesota.
Well, did you check out Eric Swalwell, one of Tim Walz's fellow Democrats? You want decency? You don't want meanness? You don't want to dehumanize people? Isn't it funny when they say those kinds of things, they always exempt Donald Trump from that list? Eric Swalwell is a very prominent California Democrat in the House of Representatives. He attended one of the No Kings rallies on Saturday. Here's what he said.
Donald Trump is America's Hitler.
How about that? Now, I get kind of stunned. You want to talk about not being mean? Tim Walz actually said we got to get meaner. Am I hallucinating? Because I feel like I'm in a weird, Twilight Zone episode. Again, nobody should blame Tim Walz for what this guy did. Nobody should blame Democrats for what this guy did. This guy needs to be blamed for what he did. But I also have eyes to see with and ears to hear with. You want me to pull the clip from Tim Walz saying we need to get meaner? How does that work? Could Tim Walz himself... Look, I call on Tim Walz to say all of us need to cut it out. And it's going to be difficult for the Tim Walzes of the world, because by cutting it out, we mean stop calling Trump Hitler and stop calling us fascists. Stop it. Just cut it out. If you believe that, if you want to lower the temperature, well, you got to start. And I do believe, this is difficult, but I do believe there's some level of, or there is a measure of lowering the temperature.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.